Hey everyone, you are watching the Zelda Challenge. Joining me, as always, is our good friend Kevin O'Rourke. Kevin, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm ready to present some fun arguments about items. This week, we have a topic coming to us from our friend of the channel, Sanji Fanboy06. They wanted us to debate which game has better items. For this one, I'm going to be talking about Twilight Princess.
And I'm going to be talking about A Link to the Past.
Both games, pretty wide range of fun items. So, Kevin, why don't you make your argument first?
So, A Link to the Past has the benefit of having a really, really huge pool of items to choose from. And a lot of them are actually optional items, which I think is really cool. There's not a lot of times in the Zelda series where there's like as many optional items that are like really, really fun, really, really unique. And I think that's where A Link to the Past shines. One of the cooler optional items is the Cane of Birna, which is a really, really cool reward for going out of your way to get it. It lets you be completely invincible for a short amount of time as long as you have enough magic, which is really cool. And that's kind of the theme of the items here too, is that they'll use a certain amount of magic, to do some really, really cool effect. Another one that's similar to the Cane of Birna is the Magic Cape, which allows you to sneak past enemies. It's really fun to just go into a room that's really giving you trouble in A Link to the Past, in one of the temples or dungeons, palaces, and just sneak past everything. I know I've used this a lot in Misery Mire. It's a lot of fun to use. You just sneak past guards or sneak past enemies. Some other really cool items are the medallions in the game, which serve to open up a few palaces that you can go into in the game, but they're also really, really useful in combat. I love using the Bamos medallion and just pressing one button to completely clear a room out of enemies. It's really, really rewarding to do that. And using the Ether medallion is a lot of fun because you have no idea like what's going to happen. You can turn enemies into jelly or turn them into fairies or have them drop whatever. It's different every time. It's really fun. And the Quake medallion is really cool too. It's similar to Bamos in a way. And it's more than just using, like, here's this item, it gets you into a place, okay, that's all you have to do with it, You can actually use it in combat, which is a lot of fun. Some more staple items that are, used throughout the game, not as much optional or used just in combat. The Magic Mirror is actually really cool. Not only does it let you travel between the light and the dark world, it also lets you warp back to the beginning of a palace that you're in, which I think is really, really awesome, especially for people that are doing like a speed run of the game. And another one that I think is like you need to use this item if you're trying to get through the game quickly is the Pegasus boots, which are really fun to just slide like right through enemies, just wipe them out, like run right through them and just destroy everything in your path. It's really fun. Another fun one too is the Cane of Samaria, which is really cool for puzzle solving. I think that A Link to the Past, like, there's a lot of value to the items, and the Cane of Samaria is another one that's a good example of this. Not only do you use it to just make like blocks that are used for puzzle solving, but you can also press the button again to actually have it burst into like laser beams that hit other enemies. I know that there's one room in Ganon's tower where the Cane of Samaria just wipes out like a ton of Wizrobes, and it's really fun to use that one. And some other items that are just like really, really fun in Link to the Past that I love using are the Ice Rod and the Fire Rod. It's very useful against regular enemies, but it's also super useful against more than one boss. So you use the Fire Rod and the Ice Rod against Trinex, but you can also use the Fire Rod against Mothula, which does a lot of damage, and you could use it against like Hinoxes and Lynels and stuff and other enemies that are in the overworld. But one that I really like is the bow and arrow, which seems like, okay, it's the bow and arrow, it's cool, it's fine or whatever. But you get one of the coolest upgrades in this game, is the upgrade to the silver arrows, which do a ton of damage and is really, it's possible to defeat Ganon without the silver arrows, but they're really like you need them to fight Ganon. The thing that I like about the silver arrows though is it kind of reminds me of the Dracula films, which I'm a big fan of, where you have to use in the satanic rites of Dracula, Peter Cushing uses a silver bullet to take out Dracula, and you do kind of the similar thing here with Ganon. So just to round out this list, the most underrated and really cool item in this game is actually the bug catching net. It has a ton of useful features. You use it to scoop up the good bee or regular bees. You could scoop up other things with it as well, fairies in particular, which are very useful. But the best feature of the bug catching net is that you can use it to replace the spin attack in the fight with Aghanim. So you can actually use the bug catching net to reflect those blasts back at him, which I think is really funny and something that kind of carried over with Ocarina of Time by using the bottle to hit the attacks back to Ganon. So yeah, that's why I think that Link to the Past has the best items. They're a lot of fun, there's a lot of utility with them, and there's some optional ones that I think are just really cool to use.
There's one word you use that I would like to focus for my argument for Twilight Princess, which was, I believe you said somewhere satisfying to use.
Yeah.
I believe Twilight Princess is full of satisfying items. Not only that, but there's one thing it did a lot when I was like looking at the list of items is it did some like fun, unique spins on some classic Zelda items too. For starters, the double claw shots. You know, you get the claw shot in the game, and it's like, it's cool. You know, it's like the hook shot, but it's a glove. You know, it's like they didn't. Why is it like this as opposed to a hook shot? But then later you find out because you get another one. And you end up swinging around in City in the Sky like you're Spider-Man, which I think is like that's pretty awesome. Like going from great to pea hat to whatever the little hookshot symbol, and you can adjust the length. Like that's super fun. And of course, it's a great spin on one of the most classic items introduced in A Link to the Past.
Yes, that's true. The hookshot's a lot of fun in that game too.
So I feel like it's this evolved version, paying homage to the original, but now we've seen double claw shots came back in Skyward Sword, I believe. A lot of people were hoping they would come back in future games like Breath of the Wild, and I think people are still hoping, the next Zelda game will have them. One that it's more satisfying than necessarily useful elsewhere is the ball and chain. When you get the ball and chain in the Snow Peak ruins, there's a lot of enemies in there that are fun to just, you're swinging that thing around like it's ridiculous, but it's actually kind of hilarious to be like walking around in the overworld in that game and then just bust out the ball and chain to like kill like a bokoblin or whatever. Like that's satisfying on its own. I also think it's really satisfying to use that weapon in the actual boss fight of that dungeon, which I think a lot of these items that you get in the dungeons are themed really well for the boss fight. And it's actually cool, a lot of them you get like, for example, you get the ball and chain like from the mini boss you fight. Like I think that's pretty cool. I think you see that a lot in this game. Like there's a really cool, like, thematic way it ties into the story of Twilight Princess, which is a story-heavy game. A lot of them are actually tied to the dungeons themselves. Like, they come up with really fun ways to use these items in the dungeon. You get the iron boots. You get to walk on, the walls and the ceilings with that. Like, if you tell me, like, what do you do with the iron boots in a Zelda game? You think, okay, you sink to the bottom of the water or whatever. What else could you do? And this game's like, no, like you use like magnets or whatever to like walk on the ceiling. That's really creative, I think. You got the spinner. It's ridiculous, but it's amazing. It's got a cool boss fight that's themed around it. We got the Dominion Rod, just like stomping around, smashing enemies with it. It's also hilarious. I think a lot of these are like, it's just so satisfying and hilarious to watch Link's like smashing things with these items. The Gale Boomerang it doesn't fall under like the unique category as far as use. I do like how you get it from a mini boss, much like the ball and chain. Like that's a pretty cool idea actually, and I love that it like talks to you too when you get it, which is kind of weird, and that it never talks to you again. But it's one of the only items that like has like some sort of like it that speaks to you. This is the ultimate practice in like satisfactory items, is using combining the bombs with arrows and having bomb arrows. I think the only other game you could do that in was Link's Awakening, right?
It stuck around in Breath of the Wild.
That's another thing that like this game introduced it, and other games saw that. Well, the games didn't see it, but you know, they realized this is an awesome feature. Like let's bring it back. And then there's some other quirky items in the series. You could say like maybe they're not satisfying, but they're really interesting ideas, I guess. Zelda games have this weird quirk to them, and Twilight Princess has its own niche. And the ultimate one, you made me think of it when you were talking about the bug catching net, is the fishing rod. You can actually use the fishing rod in the fight against Ganon. It's like that same idea carried over into this game. And I think that's like a neat little Easter egg in the game that like I mentioned before, pays homage to A Link to the Past. So I think this game, it's got a huge roster of items that are like both satisfying to use, and some that are more hilarious to use, and some that are both. And they all tie into like the story, the theme of the game, and overall it creates this, great roster of unique and fun items.
With Twilight Princess, there are some really quirky items, to quote you on that. But I think that the problem that Twilight Princess runs into, and I think you've sort of alluded to it, is that the items themselves aren't really used that much in the game. And I think that kind of hampers them a little bit. Sure, you can use the ball and chain and bust it out in the middle of Hyrule Field, but the only time that you actually need to use it in the dungeon is for, these very few moments where you're in Snow Peak Ruins, and you use it for the boss, but it's the same thing with every other item in the game. The spinner doesn't have many uses outside of the Arbiter's Grounds. The same thing with the Dominion Rod. You use it to, capture some guys, which I think is fun, playing whack-a-mole in the Temple of Time. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, there's only a couple of other instances where you use it. Whereas in Link to the Past, I think that you use the items way more frequently. Sure, you have optional items, kind of like the Bombling and the Hawkeye, which are, really fun to use. But the items themselves in Link to the Past are the best, because the optional ones that you can use are almost like rewards. They synergize a bit more with the game, whereas the stuff in Twilight Princess is like, well, maybe I could use this here, but like, do I really need to? Like, is it worth it to use the Bombling, or maybe I could just use something that's a more required item? And Link to the Past also uses those required items, I think, a little bit better than in Twilight Princess. The bow and arrow is very useful. You have to use it all the time in the game. The boomerang, while not required, is also very useful in combat. The ice rod, the fire rod, both really useful items. The magic mirror is something that helps make the game a lot easier. The Pegasus boots you need. I think it's the items that you do use in Link to the Past are more useful, which I think makes them better, rather than them being just, oh yeah, you do this really, really like cool thing, but you do it like twice. I
see your argument. My argument more rests on the idea that like the high moments of using these items are like the highest moment of pure joy. Like doing the things like smashing stuff with the ball and chain or whatever, spinning with the spinner. That and just the fact of how they thematically tie in the game, like, getting items from mini bosses, and the way they're used in the boss fights, like having boss fights like centered around this this really unique mechanic. But I also see where you're coming from. What is important is what the viewers think. So we're gonna task you guys to participate in our little poll. If you think Kevin's argument of A Link to the Past, having this, well-rounded, amazing, items that are all useful and all tie into the game really well, you can click on the icon in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. There will be a poll there. You can scroll down, click Kevin, or if you think Twilight Princess with its roster of fun items to use, select me. And let us know in the comments which person you picked and why. We'd like to hear your feedback, of course. As always, go check out some of our other videos. If you like this, we have a whole playlist of other Zelda challenges. We have other great series you can check out on our YouTube. Give us a subscribe.
You could give us a subscribe or two if you want.
Yeah, give us a subscribe or two if you want. I know some of you only have one subscribe to give, but give us a subscribe. Would you please? But yeah, let us know if there's anything else we should talk about, debate about, I should say. Kevin, thank you for participating.
Thanks, Goo. Always a pleasure. I forgot to say one additional thing.
Okay, do it.
You get the slingshot, and it sucks, because you immediately get the bow right afterwards.